Warning, the following video may contain disturbing and mature content. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Hello guys and welcome back to another Controversial Friday. My name is Rage and today I'm going to bring you guys two games that were really on the chopping block for a while there. Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare and Call of Duty 6, I presume, Modern Warfare 2. Now, these games both have their own respectable reasons in which they were put on the chopping block for being like banned and controversial and caused a lot of problems. The thing is, were they justified? That's the real question I want to get down to, so let's kind of jump right into this. Now, the idea behind the Modern Warfare series, and it seems like a recurring trend, is the Russians and the Middle Easterners are the enemies in nearly every game, and Modern Warfare 1 and 2 clearly prove it with their strong storyline of their enemies. So let's jump right into it. With Modern Warfare 1, the two enemies present in the game are the Russians and the Middle Easterners. Surprise, surprise, but two different task forces deal with two different people. The British on one hand find themselves dealing with the Russians, whereas the Americans on the other find themselves dealing with the Middle Easterners for one specific reason. The reason why the Americans are involved with the Easterners is because of a specific cutscene that involves the president of an oil-rich country being taken hostage, dragged through a city during a military coup, watching all his own people being gunned down by people, citizens, and then finally taken to the end of the chopping block, and he is executed. The biggest problem with this scene is the fact that you are playing as Al-Fuliani, the president, who's dragged through the city and taken down to the center square, where Khalid al-Assad, the main Middle Eastern enemy, or protagonist in the game, is there to execute you in front of a live crowd. Biggest problem with this is the Middle Easterners take a large kind of target in the game. Now, Modern Warfare, I understand, at the time when the game was released, there was a lot of warfare going on in eastern countries like Afghanistan and Iraq. The thing is, to make a video game portraying them as the enemies probably wasn't helping too much, despite the fact that it would sell really well. Now, the controversies behind this is the fact that the people that were killed and all the enemies in the Middle Eastern countries were all portrayed as Muslims. And of course, countries like Saudi Arabia and the United Arabian Emirates, or however that's properly pronounced, all decided, you know what, let's ban this game because this game is sending a very bad message. And sure as hell, it kind of was. It wasn't a very good message. I understand that in warfare, use of propaganda is used, and you could almost argue that Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, despite being one of the most revolutionary first-person shooters of its time, was kind of like wartime propaganda. Because you're playing as an American, fighting against a bunch of random Middle Easterners, killing them, who potentially are portrayed as Muslims. Now, I don't know where anybody else stands on this, but I think that's a little bit iffy in my mind, but that's just me. You know, everybody gets a little bothered by some things, but the next scene I'm going to talk about is one of those things that really bothers a lot of people, and this is one of the most controversial scenes in nearly any video game I've ever covered. This comes straight out of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, and if any of you guys have ever played the game, you'll most likely know what scene I'm talking about. I am talking about No Russian. Now, the biggest problem with No Russian is there is a warning at the beginning saying this scene will contain disturbing content. You do not have to proceed if you do not want to. And it gives you the choice whether to say yes or no. If you say yes, it will have a confirmation on there saying you are choosing to play this. This will not affect the storyline if you cut it. Now, this right here is just kind of like selling point. Like, well, this has got to be pretty bad if, you know, if the game doesn't want me to play it. You know, it's going to bother some people. And sure as hell it is. Now, the biggest problem with the No Russian level in Modern Warfare 2 is you're playing as a character named Joseph Allen, and you're going deep undercover to infiltrate a group of Russians, and you're trying to get close to a man under the name of Vladimir Makarov, who's a very extremist revolutionary for the Russians. But the thing is, he's not directly through the Russians. He's trying to stir up a lot of shit, and in doing so, he pretty much makes it seem like the Americans attack the Russians, and that the Russians have a good reason to go to war. Now, the biggest problem with this is your indoctrination is through walking into an airport armed with heavy machine guns, and you open fire on a group of unsuspecting travelers. And the idea behind the scene is you walk through the airport and you gun down and you massacre and you slaughter hundreds of security guards, just travelers, random citizens, all these people, and it's terrible because watching the scenes, there's people crawling away, people without legs, they're trying to get away, and you're shooting at them. You've got noob tubes, you've got a saw, and by saw I mean a light machine gun. You've got just a standard assault rifle, and you're just laying waste upon these people, and it's just brutal. And the biggest thing about this is it leads to one of the bigger plot twists, that once you get towards the very end of the level, Vladimir MacLeod actually turns on Alan and puts a bullet in his head to make it seem as if the Americans are attacking Russia, and it makes the Americans the bad guys. Now, this scene has got to be the most just chilling and disturbing scenes I've ever had to deal with in games, and it's one of those things where when I first played it, I kind of thought, oh, this is kind of interesting, right? Interesting perspective, but I never really looked too deep into it. And then when you play it again, just the fact of all these people screaming and just crawling away, and your main objective is just to murder and kill just senselessly, and it makes you wonder, what was the intent of putting that scene into Modern Warfare 2? Was it a good idea to portray that? Was it a bad idea? No. It's to build up the character of the bad guy. At the same time, it's doing so in one of the most disturbing ways possible, and it really affected people greatly. Now, this game was not directly banned in Russia. It still sold a lot of sales, but it did have the heavy implemented filters on the level saying, this is very disturbing. You do not have to play it at your own discretion. And sure as hell, people will play it anyways, right? Every game is going to have that saying, oh yeah, no, this game will have disturbing content, you don't have to play it if you want. But we all do it anyways out of some sort of morbid curiosity. And I guess people kind of paid the price for that. So, it wasn't the most justified scene in the game, and I cannot justify the two scenes in Modern Warfare 1, in which you've got a public execution of a president, and then the other one where you walk into an airport and you gun down hundreds of innocent bystanders. I honestly feel these two scenes were really not that necessary. It sure builds up the ruthlessness and just terror of the bad guys and enemies, but at the same time, it's wrong. It doesn't feel right. And I'm usually not one to get too bothered by games. I don't sit there and get all butthurt saying, oh, this is terrible, this game should be banned. But these scenes, despite them having kind of filters on them in a sense, they're very descriptive, they're very violent, and I honestly feel the game could have done without it, or they could have done it in a more understanding way. They could have said MacLeod went into an airport and gunned people down and killed them, and he's now framing the Americans, instead of making you actually play the scene. You're not forced to, but you're given the choice, and the fact that you're given that choice instead of just being part of the dialogue in the game, a little bit unnerving. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed another segment of Controversial Friday. I apologize for not having this one out recently. I was going to do Modern Warfare 3, but unfortunately I could not get my hands on a copy. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave me a like, thumbs up, all that really cool stuff. Hit the subscribe button down below if you'd like to. And I will see you guys in the next video.